Welcome everyone. Today I have the honor to have with me Dr. Sara Zaldivar. Dr. Zaldivar holds a Ph.D. in Exercise Physiology and Nutrition from the University of Miami. She is a licensed dietitian, certified personal trainer, and an American College of Sports Medicine certified exercise physiologist, and more.
And so much more. I do a lot of stuff on this side. I always love to be, learning and growing and stuff. But those are like the big ones, yes.
We had a very pleasant conversation prior to this interview, Dr. Zaldivar. May I call you Sarah?
Oh, please do. Yes, absolutely.
Uh, while I was visiting your website, I noticed that dopamine is a subject that you address. I saw dopamine brain, sorry,
Yes.
dopamine body. So, how food does destroy dopamine, if I may ask?
Great question. All right, so we're jumping right in. So when when you're eating addictive foods, whether it's sugary foods or even worse, it's when the sugar is mixed with fatty foods and then they add the salt in, all kinds of natural flavors and all kinds of stuff to layer the addictive potential of that food. It is similar to a drug. And we have enough studies now to be very confident in likening the addictive potential of food to that of hard drugs, maybe even worse off than hard drugs in certain studies. It's a very alarming subject. Oh, yes. So, like for example, in one study, this study I discovered after I had defended my dissertation because my dissertation was on this topic on food addiction and using exercise to raise baseline levels of dopamine. And we can talk about all the ways that we can raise baseline dopamine to target the root cause of addiction. But after I had defended it and finished, I did not get a chance to include that study. I wish I could have in my paper because it came out later. I realized I think it was around the year 2018 where they likened, where what they did is they pitted sugary sweetened water against heroin. And the rats, it was a rodent study, but there has never been any addictive substance that was shown to be addictive in rats that wasn't also shown to be addictive in humans. So it turned out that the rats preferred the sweet taste above and beyond heroin, free access to heroin. And that replicated the earlier studies that had pitted sugar against cocaine. I feel like those are the older studies that everybody knows now. But the heroin really shook me to my core because I think even after I did my dissertation on that topic, when I was personally battling sugar addiction, weight struggles, all that kind of stuff. And even after I defended my dissertation and I really understood the science behind it, I don't think it really had clicked for me. So you can actually see right after I published a keto dessert cookbook. It's on Amazon. And I was doing, trying the recipes and trying them out and binging on the recipes. It had not really clicked for me. But when I saw that study, it really completely, it kind of shook me to the core. And I feel like that's when it really clicked for me, just how addictive, how powerful those foods are. So to answer your question, how does that affect the brain? Just like any other drug, when you consume a drug, every time you consume it, it releases supraphysiological, like very high levels of dopamine in your brain, above what is naturally normal for a human being. And so the brain is trying to protect you in that instance because it doesn't know for how long that high level of dopamine is going to last. Because dopamine is a stimulant. So when you do a line of Coke, for example, it stimulates you. You don't want to eat, you don't want to sleep, you want to be very active, you want to be doing all kinds of stuff. You could literally waste away. Like there are people doing their studies on video gamers. Somebody died because they were so hooked on the video game and releasing all that dopamine, and they did not use the bathroom, they did not eat, they did not sleep for a very long period of time, and they actually died from that. Yes. So the brain is trying to protect us. How can the brain protect us from an unknown duration of supraphysiological stimulation? What it does is it can control the amount of the receptors for the dopamine. They're called D2 receptors. We have D1, D2, D3, D4, D5. Five main receptors for dopamine.
Okay.
The ones that we really care about when it comes to addiction is the D2 receptor. And so what the brain starts to do, it starts to downregulate. It starts to decrease the amount of D2 receptors that it creates on the cell surface of brain cells. And so now, even if you're releasing all the dopamine, you're eating the cupcakes, the pizzas, the addictive stuff, you're releasing the dopamine, but dopamine cannot function. You can't really feel stimulated unless the dopamine binds to its receptor. So now the brain has decreased the number of receptors. So that lock and key situation that's supposed to happen for you to feel the effects of dopamine can no longer happen. So what we do in the short term, we start to build tolerance, meaning we start to increase our dosage of the drug, because if you release more and more dopamine, the frequency with which you stimulate the receptors also can make you feel the same effects of addiction, like high and energetic and all that kind of stuff. So you cannot over or circumvent this problem, and this is what addicts do. They start increasing the dosage of the drug, so they release even more dopamine. So whatever remaining D2 receptors they have, they are being stimulated at a higher frequency. But even that eventually leads to even further destruction of the D2 receptors. So we raise the dose even more. And so over time, we start off, let's say this is your baseline dopamine level. And when I say baseline dopamine level, I mean the total number of D2 receptors in your brain. So if you're starting up here, if you're healthy, happy individual, they're pretty high up there. So your baseline dopamine level is high, the number of D2 receptors are high, and your mood is high, and you're energetic, and you're just motivated. Everything is great. As addiction takes hold over time, the number of D2 receptors and your mood, your energy, everything starts to drop, 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 drop over time. So the trend eventually becomes where you have very, very little D2 receptors. So now a drug addict, whether it's food addiction or any kind of drug, they're not using the drug anymore to go above their baseline. They're using the drug to bring it back just to feel normal again. You see? That's the cycle of addiction.
Yes, and just for clarity for myself,
Yes.
uh, what destroys the D2 receptors?
Any kind of excessive dopamine triggers, whether it's a cupcake,
Okay.
or it's cocaine, or it's heroin, or it's a certain type of video game. For some people, it's shopping. Some behave sex addiction. Anything that you do too much of, or that you ingest, that can release dopamine at a very high rate, more than what we normally in nature and in normal life would be expected to release, you
Okay.
know?
Okay. So
Yeah.
when the receptors are solicited too much, then it destroys them.
Yes. So the receptors are activated too much.
Yeah.
So because they're activated too much and you're in that stimulated state all the time, your brain and your body, you're just trying to protect you to not kill yourself, to not waste away, because you won't feel like eating, you won't feel like, it depends on the drug, but basically it's a form of self-protection. So the body adapts to too much dopamine. It's like, wow, we've got tons of dopamine. I don't need all these receptors. Let me downgrade. Let me decrease the number of D2 receptors on the cell surface of brain cells or nerve cells, you know?
Okay. So how would you then rehabilitate the brain?
That's another great question. So this is really what I'm very passionate about. It was also the topic of my dissertation, and I have a guide, the dopamine brain one that you mentioned. It's a brain rehab protocol. It lays out all the different ways that you can kind of recover or repair the damage that was done to your D2 receptors. But one of the best tools that I love is anything that's uncomfortable, ideally exercise. Exercise is the fastest way to repair the damage done to your brain. If you don't do that, if you don't do an active exercise plan or some other things we can talk about, it can take up to 2 years for your brain chemistry to go back to normal.
Okay.
So, yes, this is why the success rate of rehab is like maybe 5% in terms of long-term sobriety. And that's because they're not treating the root cause. And sometimes it's like a month stay, but after that month, you still have a year and another 11 months for your brain chemistry to return to normal. So you're in a very vulnerable state for an extended period of time.
Okay.
So it's inevitable that you're going to go back into your drug. And so exercise is the best way, but not any kind of exercise. Because sometimes when I say exercise, like, oh yeah, I go walking. No, no, that's not gonna let me preface this by saying anything that's outside your comfort zone. So anything that's making you feel a little bit uncomfortable. So if you were bedridden and walking is painful a little bit to you, then yes, that's gonna elevate your D2 receptors above what they were.
Okay.
But if you are, I don't know, in your 20s, in your 30s, you're healthy, you're fine, you're going about your day, but you're just kind of struggling, let's say, with some food addiction, but you're generally active, just walking more, that's not going to trigger it because dopamine is also an anesthetic. And so it suppresses feelings of pain, emotions of pain. And so you have to give the brain a reason to waste its time, energy, and effort to build up back again the dopamine machinery. Why would it waste its resources to build back up that brain center that and all the dopamine producing cells and the more D2 receptors? Why would it waste energy on that? You have to give it a reason. The reason is I'm doing something every day that's a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit painful. I need more of an anesthetic. And so now the brain adapts by increasing its dopamine machinery. So you have more of that anesthetic, result.
Okay. Wow, that's fascinating. I like that.
Right?
So I understand now. Um, I've noticed that as I exercise, I tend to increase the time of performance, my performance, because I'm following that level where I'm outside my comfort zone. So of course it means I'm going up in terms of performance. The body is building, okay, I like that.
Yes. And that's so beautiful to know because it means the higher your fitness level, the higher your baseline dopamine receptors, which means you get to be in complete control of where you want your baseline dopamine levels to be. Because maybe you raised it a little bit, things got better a little bit, but you still have those urges here and there, then great. Then raise it even higher, run even faster, lift even heavier weights. You raise it even up, and you'll become more and more resilient against addictions, just in all addictions, really, not just your drug of choice.
Wow, I like that. So uh, to increase the effort of exercise is the antidote to actually to some addiction, some form of
All of them, yes, all addictions, all
all
of them. Because
beautiful.
we all share the same biochemistry in the brain, right? The root cause of all of it is just lower D2 receptor numbers, And we do have a genetic tendency, like 40%, but people say like you have the gene. Well, 40% of the population has the gene for addiction. It's called reward deficiency syndrome, whereby 40% of the population is born naturally with around 30% less numbers of D2 receptors in their brain. So are we going to say that I have like the gene for it, or is just that a normal trait in our species? And so some of us tend to be a little more vulnerable towards addictions. So I don't look at it as like this, I feel like that's a normal trait. It's like, how do you respond to that trait is what sets the tone for your life.
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
But this is a key information because I'm just thinking I was recently interviewing Dr. Gary Fetke and he was sharing that right now, according to the statistics, 80 to 85% of the population is either pre-diabetic or diabetic.
Yeah,
I
metabolic
mean,
syndrome, yeah.
so it's like it's way above 30%. I mean, it
It's
is
yeah. Only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. That's insane,
It is. It is.
right? Yeah, and a lot of countries are following suit. They're adopting our Western habits. They're adopting the standard American diet. So they're just going in that same direction. And the food industry knows that, and so it's doubling down with its marketing and it's targeting those vulnerable population. And it's a crime, really.
I agree with that, Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a sad reality, but thankfully for YouTube, we no longer have gatekeepers, you know? Like I couldn't do all the work that I do if I wanted a job back in the day, you know, because but now I quit all my jobs and thankfully my social media brand, my content, I get all my clients, my guides, I sell my guides, all that kind of stuff. And I'm making, really a very good living and very comfortable. And I don't have to what's the word like censor. I don't have to censor myself, because I'm not because my bills are paid, but back in the day, not that long ago, you couldn't really tell it like it is because you had to put food on the table and you can't be working as a licensed dietitian. You had to follow what the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics puts out, and what they put out is the worst possible dietary advice. Like you couldn't even like even if you tried, you couldn't make up such a terrible dietary recommendations. But that's what they teach, and if you're not following that, they could sue you. They've actually sued. There is this case where they sued Cassie Bjorg. She's a registered dietitian, and for 5 years they took her to court. And at the end of it, she's like, okay, fine. If all you want me to do is just remove the RD credential, the registered dietitian, that means she's licensed with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I don't care. I don't care about it. As a matter of fact, I'd rather not even be associated with the RD credential because what it means to be an RD in this day and age is embarrassing. It's like, because what are they teaching,
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
so, yeah, the world is changing, and I'm so happy, so excited about all these changes. I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to see that the Congress is doing some meetings about dietary guidelines with Dr. Casey Means and so many others. So
Yeah.
that's encouraging, with
Yeah, I agree. Like maybe yesterday I posted on my Instagram this I just read the headline. Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California. He just passed a bill to ban all artificial flavors and dyes that have been banned in Europe anyway, to ban them in public school food, So, it's a teeny tiny step, but I'll take anything at this
uh,
point.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sarah, I also notice on your website that you speak about the power of visualization. Please
Mm,
elaborate on this thing.
yes. Okay. Because a lot of times when I talk about exercise, and I've worked with clients, and I'm currently still working with clients who will start off with me at over 400 pounds, and we can lose a lot of weight without having to exercise vigorously, just by removing carbs and, all the kind of stuff that I do. But the there are a lot of people that understand what we're talking about, and like, yes, this is my problem. It's the food addiction. My dopamine is all messed up. I've damaged my brain. But I mean, you're telling me I need to work out harder and harder, and I can't. I can barely walk because I need a knee joint replacement. It's like, fine, no worries. I have another solution. You can raise baseline dopamine levels in so many ways. Visualization is a very powerful way to do that as well. Visualization is a form of meditation. Have you ever have you ever done meditation before? Do you have experience with that?
Yes, actually, I do teach meditation also.
I love that so much. How did I not know that? Oh, wow. Okay. I love
Now
it.
you do. I guess we
I
didn't have the chance to address that topic.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, you have to tell me more about that. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so um Meditation, my first experience with that was when I was having a lot of public speaking anxiety when I first, because I grew up in Lebanon, and it was like a rough upbringing. I'm a very like, you know, female empowerment. I can do it all myself. I don't need anybody, and it's kind of hard to be like that in the Middle East.
Yes.
Like I just never fit in. And so I was 25 years old. I had just finished my master's degree, and then I hopped on a one-way ticket to Miami to start my PhD at the University of Miami, right? And so right away they put you, because having a PhD is like a paid job. They pay you a stipend. It's not a lot, but you can pay your bills, you can live, you can survive. And so I had just gotten here like brand new, and all of these, rich students, I'm teaching them, and they're almost my age. There's not a lot of difference. They're like in their 20s, I'm 25. I didn't have a lot of experience. I still had a lot to learn about nutrition too. And so now I realize it was just a knowledge gap, an experience gap that obviously it's like you tell me, go give me a lecture on physics. I'm going to have a panic attack. It's like, I can't do it. But so that was kind of like a mild version of it. So I was having public speaking anxiety. It was terrible. I would be walking towards the class and I could start feeling my heart beating out of my chest. It was so awful. I could hide it, thankfully. I think so. I don't think like you could see it, but I wasn't enjoying it. Like like right now we're having fun. It's so much fun to talk about our passions. So I didn't get to really enjoy that part. So that's how I got into meditation. I downloaded Headspace app, which I still recommend it highly. It really helped me out a lot. And because it had guided meditations, meaning Andy Paricom is the guy. He's the guy who started it, and he will talk into your ears, but not the whole time. He's like, okay, like sit down, breathe deeply in and out, do like a body scan, pay attention, just be aware of the voices to kind of neutralize them, and then you start focusing on your breath. That's great. That I think that really I don't do meditation, I do visualization now, but for the period of time when I did do meditation, I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. and I would do like 2 hours of meditation before I go to school. And I really, yes, to this day, I can feel that I'm so aware. It really reshaped my brain where I'm aware of my thoughts and my feelings, and I'm more in tune with my intuition because of it.
Beautiful.
So, right, and that's great. Now, if we have a little bit of experience with meditation, we can leverage that power even further and introduce visualizations. Visualizations, the only difference between a meditation and a visualization is that instead of sitting and focusing on the breath, are they deep, are they short, and all that kind of stuff, what you do instead, you focus on. I introduced two terms. I introduced two forms of visualization in my guide Monster Mindset because I had to create those techniques to help myself take my productivity, my goals to another level. So I introduced her two different forms of visualizations: energy visualization versus training visualization. What's the difference? An energy visualization is when you are visualizing your end goal. What is your end goal? So for me, I know like I'm known as a health expert, but I also have a goal of performance and music and sing, which I already have songs, but like I'm just starting out, right? So I can visualize myself on stage filling out stadiums. That when you visualize that goal that you're chasing, it's dopamine on demand because it's a form of meditation, and we have studies that show you can increase dopamine release in your brain by 65% in a single session.
Wow.
Yes. So if you're feeling stressed out, if you're feeling unmotivated on some days, something happened, you got into an argument with your significant other, whatever the case may be, you want dopamine right away at that level, right? And so what I do, just I sit down and I slip into a visualization. It doesn't have to be very long, and the more skilled you get at it, the shorter the time period that you might need to get that effect. And I start visualizing my goals. So just remembering why. Or if you're having a craving or trying to force yourself to work on something you don't feel like it, just take a second, remember why you're doing it. And the brain doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know the difference between what's reality and what's imagined. So they've done studies, for example, where there's tons of studies on that. It's so fascinating, where they will train, it's just a very simple thing to be able to control it in a study format. So they will do a thumb abduction. It's like abduction is away from your hand. And some people will actually move and the others will not. They will visualize as if they're moving. And they both got very similar rates of increases in muscle strength. And so, yeah, they've done it also in pianos. That's probably more famous study where some people actually played out and practiced a piano piece, and the other people visualized themselves playing the piano piece, and then in the performance, it was the same. So whether you're visualizing doing something or you're actually doing it, you're still progressing and you're building up the skills, which is why every single athlete, successful person, it is so rare to find a peak performer that does not include visualization as a very important part of their training. That's how powerful it is. So energy visualization gives you dopamine on demand. You're visualizing your ideal goal. And then the training visualization is what kind of I started talking about, which is training yourself to do things that you're still not very good at, like maybe deploying discipline. So visualize yourself overcoming the urge to use a drug. You rehearse it over and over again, as opposed to waiting for life to present you with these training moments. How, you might get one or two urges a day, versus you can rehearse overcoming those urges hundreds of times in your head. So you're very well prepared so you have more reps under your belt overcoming that urge, or whatever it is that you're struggling with. Just visualize yourself. The way that I've been able to wake up early and go to bed early is something I've always struggled with so much, because it's hard for me to go to sleep on time really early to get enough sleep, because I always have one more project I need to do, just one more thing, one more email, one more thing.
Yes.
So my visualization I trained myself to be able to overcome this very strong resistance I have to stopping everything and going to sleep. So I went over and over and over and over and over again. And so in a very short period of time, I was able to install this habit, as opposed to waiting, because you only have 365 days a year. Those are only 365 reps to practice overcoming the urge to keep working and not go to sleep. Whereas I could do that all in like 1 or 2 days, rehearsing them in my brain, and that's it, and habit installed.
Wow. That's
It's
wonderful.
powerful. Yeah.
Yes, yes. You remind me, I spent 3 years in Holland, and there was a man, he was 61 years old, and he was passionate about tennis. And he would watch Pete Sampras play his games, and he would watch them over and over and over. And while he was in Holland, he was there for several months, he joined a competition he was 61, and most of players were in either late 20s or beginning of 30s. He won the competition.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I
He
believe it.
was telling me about visualizing, the backward stroke, the forward, and all this, and he would practice against a wall when he was alone. And I'm happy that you mentioned about this, because it just reminds me it's simple, but of course it needs determination and focus, and then yes, wonderful.
Yeah. And over time, the more skilled you get at visualizing, which again is a form of meditation, the more skilled you get, the more experience you get, the higher your D2 receptor numbers get. That's another added benefit. So over time, you're also raising your D2 receptors, and that has been studied and published. And I put all the resources in the Monster Mindset Guide when I talk about those things.
Wonderful. Which means then it requires less dopamine to have the desired effect.
So, which means that, yeah, which means that you're very sensitive to dopamine. So just a tiny release of dopamine makes you happy. So now just a simple social event makes you very happy. Whereas in the past, just I don't feel like going out, you don't get the same dopamine boost that normally we're expected to have from socialization. Or a walk in the park and you're having a blast, whereas somebody who has lower D2 receptors is so bored walking in the park and just being in nature or things, it's like now that's something that there's a quote, I don't know who said it first, maybe Dr. Andrew Huberman, but I'm not sure. He said, I think it's him, he said, um, addiction is the gradual narrowing of things that bring you joy or pleasure, and sobriety is the gradual expansion of things that bring you joy and pleasure.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're just naturally happy. Everything makes you, it's like, why are you so happy all the time? You're just excited and happy about everything. Nothing major has to happen for you to feel happy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'd like to, if you can please talk about dieting. I've noticed that you speak about the power of carnivore diet. So I'd
Yes.
like you please to elaborate on this.
Thank you. Yes. I was invited to be on the first ever TV show as a speaker on the carnivore diet. That was a great experience. It's called Reverse TV series. It was directed by Charles Maddox. He's actually the nephew of Bob Marley, the late Bob Marley, the singer. Yes. So we had a great experience shooting that TV show, and I was chosen because on my YouTube channel, I guess I was one of the few doctors, earliest doctors, starting to talk about carnivore diets. Um, the carnivore diet is a form of a ketogenic diet where it's like very low carb. Actually, it's close to zero carbs unless you add in, some milk products. And it is, generally speaking, what our species evolved to eat. This is what we ate for 99.99% of our existence as a species here on Earth. We evolved during an ice age where plants literally cannot grow. You can't have a tropical forest in an ice age. So for the vast majority of our existence, we thrived, and the humans that did the best and were able to be fertile and reproduce were the ones that thrived when they ate meat. And so they gave the meat loving genes. And so over very long period of time, now the genes that we have expect to get mainly meat or as much meat as you can. That's when you're healthiest and you have the least amount of inflammation. And so just from a historical perspective, that's our diet. That's what we evolved eating. Kind of like how pandas eat bamboos. If you give them something else, they're gonna get sick. Or, lions eat meat if you give them something else. Same thing with humans. It's just that we sort of lost our way a little bit because around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, what happened is some climate event occurred, and we started having global warming, and there are natural variations in the climate. So it is, we're expected to have an ice age right now. It's just that all the CO2 emissions that humans are pumping out are kind of delaying the ice age, but we should technically be in an ice age right now.
Okay.
So that's a natural variation that the Earth goes through. So 10,000 to 12,000 years ago was when the last ice age ended. And so that coupled with overhunting of these large fatty animals that we love to hunt and eat. And there is evidence that there might have been some event, an asteroid hitting the Earth. Like all these things kind of happen around the same time. And so we literally could not eat enough meat anymore. And so we were forced to either starve to death or figure out some other form of nutrition to survive. And because one of our powers as a species and why we survived is because we are flexible and adaptable to our environment. And so we started, there was a lot of pressure on us to figure out how to harvest and consume grains, beans, and also we learned how to domesticate cattle and consume their dairy products. So that allowed us to survive, which is great, but we did pay a heavy price with our health. with that, because if you dig up the skeletons of humans before the agricultural revolution, so basically the carnivore skeletons, versus humans who started eating more plant foods, grains and beans, after the agricultural revolution, you can see that there is a striking difference. We started getting shorter. Our brains started shrinking for the first time in history, in recent history. And that led to smaller jaws, which led to not enough space for our teeth. So you start seeing in those skeletons for the first time misalignment of the teeth. Unfortunately, they did not have braces, so they had to go through life with misaligned teeth, but at least they were alive, right? And then the bones were rickety and diseased, and they were porous, and they were just weaker bones. So we did have to pay a pretty heavy price when we started relying more on plant foods. And if we want to explain, like, okay, what is it about plant foods? Why is it that plant foods are leading to all of this deterioration in our health? And we could explain it by looking at the plant toxins, plant self-defense chemicals that they naturally produce as a form of self-defense, because plants, they can't really fight us and they can't run away from us. So they have to resort to their only way of defense, which is creating more, becoming master chemists, basically. And it's like a chemical warfare where they're just creating more molecules and chemicals that only get activated after you chew, you bite into it. Like, for example, broccoli. Yeah, broccoli will not have those toxins activated until you actually destroy the cell wall and you bite into it. And that's when you start having those plant toxins really affecting us negatively. And so there is a good reason to believe that almost everybody is going to thrive the closer they get to a carnivore diet. I'm not 100% sure we have to be 1000% carnivore at all times. That I'm still, I don't know, I'm not 100% certain of that, but I think the closer you get to as carnivore as possible, I think the healthier you will get.
I guess it depends where you are in your state of health and metabolic health.
Yes. That's yeah, like if you have type 2 diabetes, don't be adding sweet potatoes, because there's a sub fraction of the carnivore community that loves to do, fruit and honey. And if you're metabolically, you have a lot of insulin resistance, you have type 2 diabetes, you do not want to get close to that for at least a few years, maybe forever. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what is your version of carnivore diet? What do
Ooh.
you include? What do you eliminate?
So tonight I'm going to have ground beef burgers and cheese on top. A lot of ground beef burgers. I do lots of eggs and bacon and cheese on top. I love shrimp. I love salmon. I'll do that. There's really nothing that I don't love. It's carnivore. I do everything. I do ground turkey here and there. I do chicken, rotisserie chicken. Um, Oh, I really love air fried chicken wings. It's the best thing ever. You get an air fryer, you get chicken wings. I like to have, I'm sponsored by this carnivore brand. It's called Carnivore Crisps. I wish I knew the affiliate code that I could tell you, but I don't have it on top of my mind, so people can get a discount. But I love they call it what do they call it? Butter something, but it's really just beef tallow, rendered beef tallow in a jar. So I get a little spatula and I remove a little bit of that beef tallow, and anything I'm cooking, I like wipe the pan in it, or like the air fryer, I wipe it a little bit, or like the chicken wings, I can put a little bit on that, and then put them in the air fryer. They say 15 minutes is enough. No, I like them crispy. So I'll put them for half an hour in the air fryer at around maybe 370 degrees Fahrenheit, and they come out crispy, delicious. And I keep the skin on because you need that collagen, When you're not eating carbs, you need an energy source, so you get it from the good fats. And yeah, that's, I mean, I can list off so many things, but anything that's meat related, I'll have it.
So, animal source food.
Yeah, as
So
much as
the
possible.
dairy are included, not just butter, but also other dairy products.
Yeah, so you can do, yeah, technically speaking, you could do milk. I think I react. My gene, my 23andMe like gene testing told me that I have lactose intolerance, and I did. The only time I really felt it is when I had a couple of glasses of milk, real milk, like actual dairy milk in one day, and I did feel that like my digestion wasn't great. So that's why I'm not a big fan of milk. A lot of my clients like to have yogurt. I don't care for yogurt so much. So I feel like for me, the only things that I do have on a carnivore diet when it comes to dairy is cheeses and butter, maybe sour cream. Sour cream and ground beef, I'll have that every once in a while. I like that combo as well. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, in a carnivore diet, we eliminate all plant-based food, all
Yes.
fruits,
Yeah.
vegetables,
Everything. And
nuts,
yes,
seeds.
I'm not very strict about it. I'm more strict about staying in ketosis and making sure that I'm running on ketones, and we can talk about that if you want. So sometimes I'll have nuts, like I have macadamia nuts. Um, I am prioritizing my ketones to be high because I feel like my mental health and my productivity and my focus is at an all-time high whenever I'm in deep ketosis. Um, so yeah, I'm not like that. There are some people in the carnivore community where it's like plants are gonna kill you, and yes, maybe on a long enough period of time. But I think aging, if we cure aging, we don't really have to care so much about this chronic dose of plant consumption. And at the end of the day, even if you eat nothing but meat, even if you adhere to this theory that meat will cure everything and you only eat meat, at the end of the day, you're still gonna die. And so really, I think the biggest focus that humanity needs to obsess about is to cure aging because we're really close. And so if just more people realize how close we are, we're already reversing aging, like Dr. David Sinclair and Dr. Aubrey de Grey. Like everybody should go to YouTube, listen to all their lectures. They give out a lot of information, their books. I've interviewed some anti-aging biotech company CEOs like Liz Parrish, who's on my YouTube channel, James Stroll, who puts together their yearly anti-aging rat festival, where he brings together all the scientists and they all report on what all the new results that's coming out. So the more you go down that rabbit hole, the more you realize, oh my gosh, I really don't have to die. So like, let's focus on that. Let's speed up the process because I know I don't want to die. And I feel like that's really where the focus should be, as opposed to how much meat versus how much vegetable. At the end of the day, they're all going to die. Only people who are going to cure their aging are going to survive. So I think that's far more important, you know?
Yes, yes. I like your definition about aging. Can you share that with us?
Mm. Aging is a chronic disease. It is not an inevitability the way that we have been conditioned in prior years. I understand the previous generations. I'm not putting them down. We didn't have the science to give me this confidence to say those crazy things, right? But now we have the science. Things have changed. Now we know that we can reverse aging. Dr. David Sinclair, I used to show this to my students. I'd always go off on an anti-aging rant here and there, or multiple rants throughout the semester, because people need to know how much control we have over the aging process. So I would show them this video of like two twins. I'm not. They're born on the same day. Two rats or two mice. I think it was mice. Born on the same day. One was given this anti-aging molecule. It's called NMN. It's a form of B vitamin. As we get older, it starts to decrease. Technically speaking, NMN converts into NAD+. Again, NMN and NAD+, they're both the same thing. They're like forms of a B vitamin. And vitamin B3 to be specific. As we get older, the concentration of NAD+ starts to drop in our cells, like a lot, especially as we get older and older, it starts to drop even more and more. So what his lab did, they gave the NMN molecule because it's better absorbed and it can convert into NAD in the cells. He gave one of the mice the NMN, the other mouse was not given that, and they put him on a treadmill and they measured their vitality, how much they can run. And his assistants like called him up one day, like, we think the treadmill broke. And it wasn't that the treadmill broke, it was that the mouse that was given the NMN molecule was so youthful and it had reversed its aging that it was able to outperform the usual amount that a mouse treadmill is supposed to run for. It just, it's like how much more does that treadmill have to go? And you can actually see the video. They also look visibly different. One is wrinkly and has a gray hair, and the other one doesn't. The other one looks young. So it's not only does it look young, but it is young, like internally. It's healthy, you know? So aging is a disease. As you know, we all this talk and all of this research on cancer and heart disease, which is the top two killers. Everybody, you know, including us, not me, because I'm not gonna die, but everybody else is either going to die from heart disease or cancer. Why are we trying to cure those diseases by putting a band-aid on when the root cause is aging? Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, those are diseases of aging. So let's just focus on the root cause, and we don't have to worry about the gazillion different expressions of aging, all of the diseases that start to happen as we get older and older, you know? Rant over.
Yeah, well, I like what you just elaborated on because you touched something that I'm sensitive as a subject is limiting beliefs. And I
Yes.
know that this is part also of your program, so please tell us more about.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like when I coach my clients, they come to me for weight loss, but then 99% of the time it's about we always come across it's always the limiting beliefs that hold people back, you know? 99% of my time I feel it's always about coaching for mindset and mainly the limiting beliefs that people have. And one of the ways we can break through that is by education. Like for me, I'm not going to just wake up and be like, I'm going to cure aging. Like it doesn't, I'm all for positive talk. I'm all for affirmations. I believe in the power of beliefs and what we say to ourselves, but I believe it's better if it's backed by evidence, by hard data, by real science. And so I make it very easy for me to have this belief by constantly learning about it, constantly reading books on it, constantly like there's from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, anytime I'm not working on like something cognitive, like writing a guide or filming a YouTube video or seeing a client, all the other times you have so much time where you're just running errands in the day where you could be educating yourself. So I have my YouTube or a podcast or an audiobook constantly in my ears, and I put it at twice the speed. So I'm getting, which is the maximum amount of speed that they allow us to speed it up. And I've trained my brain to get comfortable absorbing information at a faster rate. I didn't go from normal speed to two speed, 2x speed overnight. Over a period of a few weeks, you train your brain to get there. And now you have all this information, and you're like, of course we can reverse aging. Of course we can eventually cure it. We just need more people to be aware of what's going on, and they need to educate themselves, and understand like, no, we have a lot currently with everything that we only have right now. We have a ton of control over the aging process. So imagine with just a little bit more funding, all we need is $1 billion. I feel that could cure it, you know? So it's like, Elon Musk, what are you doing? What's the point of going to Mars if you're going to die in a few years? Let's cure aging and then we go to Mars. Anyway.
Well, I like very much what you're saying because basically it's training ourselves to choose uh, to expand limits, not to go
Yes.
for what we're used to know or hear. I remember his name is Veda Vyasa. He's a sage in India, and I think he was on Earth 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, and he used to say that people um, get old, sick, and die because they are used to see people getting old, getting sick, and dying.
Yes. Yes.
It's amazing what you choose in your awareness, the goal that you set for yourself, as you spoke earlier about visualization and now limiting beliefs. So, how would you then switch a set of limiting beliefs to a higher mindset? How would you
I
do?
think education, it plays a big role. Like, for example, it's so true what you said. There was a Harvard, what's her name? I can't, I wish I could remember her name, but she's very famous. Harvard scientists that did those studies where they got people and they put them in a monastery for like a week or two, and they told them, we want you to act as if you're living 20 or 2 decades earlier, and the TV, the radio in that monastery was all set up to only show shows from that era, and all their conversations between them had to pretend as if they were living in that era. And they took biomarkers. They measured their like aging biomarkers, like hard data, and then they compared that before and after their stay, and they were biologically younger, like physically, not just mentally, but physically younger. They walked faster. It's wild stuff. So there's definitely a very powerful mind aspect, but I don't think that's enough. I don't think just pretending that we're gonna live forever is gonna work. I think we also have to do the treatments, the anti-aging treatments, the gene therapies that are coming out. You know, Liz Parrish, who I interviewed, she already did the gene therapies. She was patient zero because the FDA, they're very happy to force everybody to take the V shot before we have enough, long-term data, but they make it so hard for us. Like if people are dying right now, they are willing to take the gene therapies to see maybe that'll save their lives. But like, no, they make it so hard because there's still this collective thought that, aging is natural, is normal, we're supposed to die. So she had to fly to a Central American country, or somewhere in Latin America, where she was able to do the gene therapies. The woman is in her 50s. She looks like she's in her 30s. Insane. So, and they're publishing and developing all of these anti-aging treatments. So we're gonna need that as well. So it's both the mind needs to be there and the actual action needs to be there. It needs to match, and I think that can give you the best chance at not dying.
Yes, yes, I fully agree. I've taught meditation, so of course meditation is part of my life, but I realized 2 years and a half ago that I need to bring attention to my body and nutrition in order to even raise higher
Yes,
the possibilities.
of course.
That of course my mind and my heart will sustain. So at every level we raise, you know?
Yes, because your brain is a physical organ that requires blood flow and nutrients and all that stuff. And what you feed it in terms of diet, the exercise, all that stuff can change, transform your brain. It can increase serotonin, dopamine, the baseline levels of all of these, acetylcholine, the focus molecule, right? All this stuff, you can actually physiologically change that. And so then your visualization and your meditation sessions become more effective, and you can feel that once you're there, you can feel it more easily and more powerfully.
Yes, definitely. Um, you touched briefly earlier about rehabilitation. So, if I may ask you to elaborate a little bit more, why is it that rehab facilities have poor rates of success?
Mm. I don't think a lot of them focus so much on the exercise component as much as they should with the same intensity. And I've interviewed a lot of sugar addiction experts and even the heads of rehab facilities. And I think I have a playlist all on that topic on chats and interviews I've done with them. And there's almost this idea like you don't want to stress yourself because that can trigger, that's gonna trigger an addiction. And it's like you can't live in fear because you'll always be vulnerable. No, you have to attack it head on. And so that's why my approach is the complete opposite of that. It's like, no, you have to build up the resilience as opposed to living in fear of any kind of stress. Because if you live in fear and stress, that means you live in fear of success, because success comes as you put your body through stress, right? Good stress, right? A muscle won't grow unless you stress it out, right? A project won't move forward unless you work that extra half hour after you're tired. That's progress it comes from the pressure, without pressure, there is no progress. So you can't live like that. And then, of course, you're not getting successful in life. You're not achieving your dreams. And that's the real trauma. That's the real tragedy. That's what's going to make you look for addictions.
Yeah, I think it's Edison who failed thousands of times before he came up with the light bulb or something.
Oh, I love that. Yes, Thomas Edison's famous quote. I have all these quotes in the Monster Mindset Guide, and I'm launching another guide called SUPERBREED Mindset, which is purely quotes, all of it. Because I'm collecting quotes left and right. I always want to make sure I'm feeding my brain with that, and that is definitely in it. He said, I did not fail. I just found 10,000 ways to not create a light bulb or something like that.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, the persistence, that's a form of stress, the frustration of spending your life trying to figure it out, and it's like failure after failure, but it's not a failure. That's what sets winners apart, right? Because we don't fail. We either win or we learn.
Yeah,
We fail forward.
exactly. So there are lessons to take you forward. Yes.
Exactly.
Determination. Yes, this determination to find a solution keeps you in that level of stress, which still is creative, yet, you know. So,
Yes.
what's missing to these rehabilitation programs?
So okay, what I would do is I would follow the brain rehab protocol that's outlined in Dopamine Brain, which goes through the whole exercise protocol. The visualization, I think both need to be there. The body needs to be there, and the mind has to be there. The limiting beliefs, being true to, I think the biggest one is being true to yourself. I think when you're living a life that you're supposed to live as opposed to what you really want to do in life, I think that drains your dopamine more than anything else. And so the more real and authentic you can be in your actions and in the way that you live your life and the way that you set boundaries, I think that's the biggest one, but that's the one that people have the hardest time following. So for me, for example, I have all of this very sciencey, extremely sciencey health content. And then I'm posting a rap song, and like tons of music at the same time. Like people would be terrified to do what I'm doing. Most people would be terrified, be like, oh, no, 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 my brand is just that. And it's like, well, you don't understand. Your brand means nothing. It's not helping nobody if you're not living the life. And that's why they don't get the success rates that I get.
Okay, beautiful, very inspiring.
Thank
So,
you.
mindset is very important in the various programs that you offer.
Oh my gosh, yes. It is everything. Mindset is everything. Again, when I see my clients 99% of the time, I'm not because they already know what to eat. They already know. They already know the basics. That's like such an easy part. It's like, okay, well, why do you keep feeling the urge, or like you feel why do you keep feeling the there's a void that you're trying to fill? It's because they're not living an authentic life. It's because maybe I see a lot of housewives where it's like, yeah, they want to be independent. They want to be financially independent. They want to have their own thing, but they've been in this life for so long, they forgot who they are you know unless you target that and you go at it head on, the diet and the exercise and all the stuff you want to do, it's going to be very hard to implement because you're not inspired, you're not chasing a vision, you don't know where you're going. And just living that it's like the twilight zone. They're just living the same day over and over again. There's nothing inspiring about it. Why would you want to go through the little bit of like hardship to change your habits? There's nothing to look for. And nobody's gonna say, like, they say it, but in a very subtle way. But I can tell the passion isn't there, because they're scared of the change. And that process can take a little bit of time. And like I give them playlists, mindset playlists, because it's a lot of it's a lot of mindset shifts that need to happen, and they have to listen to a lot of it from very different people until they find that person that they can connect with and who's saying the same message, but now it clicks with them. So it's important to constantly be immersing your brain in those kinds of people so that you start associating with them and you start realizing they're not so different than you. So if they can do it, you can do it.
Wow, that's a beautiful hope.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Uh, Sarah, I thank you so much. And if people would like to visit your website or contact you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so my website is drsarahzaldivar.com. For coaching, it's drsarahzaldivar.com/coaching. And for the guides, it's drsarahzaldivar.com/shop. And then, of course, Instagram at drdr.sarah with an h dot Zaldivar. And my YouTube channel is under my name, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. So it's very easy to see me or to find me.
Wonderful. Again, Sarah, I thank you so much. This was a very enriching conversation. And I'm already looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much, Christian. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. And, I had a fantastic time and I would be
Yes.
thrilled to have a round two. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you, and looking forward to our next time.
Thank you.